This is the Rat Alert. Civil defense information will be broadcast at 6:40.
West of the Rockies, you're on the air. Hello.
Y2K, how can we prepare?
Stop a few of their machines and radios. Throw them into darkness for a few hours.
We are fighting for our lives. My family must survive.
For 5 years, 1,000 gallons of gas, air filtration, water filtration.
Coming at you from the frozen tundra that is East Central Alberta, Canada. Streaming live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, Telegram, Rumble, and Odyssey. Welcome back to the workshop where we create community, find freedom, promote preparedness, and share success. I'm Toolman Tim, and today is January 21st, 2023, and tonight is episode 240 of the Workshop Podcast. Getting closer to the big 250. So in just a minute, we're going to bring Val on. Real quick, I'm going to knock the announcements out of the way for you guys. February 9th is going to be episode 250. A week before that, Groundhog Day, we're going to launch our Groundhog giveaway. So keep an eye out for that. And of course, if you've been thinking about signing up for the Patch of the Month Club, now's the time to do it. We still have the Mitch promo code for another 10 days till the end of the month. You get 2 free patches for signing up. Always, always love using a hater to turn it into a coupon code. So don't forget, patchofthemonth.co. We got Clark and Haas in here already. Nice to have you. Good group. And finally, we're going to do one more installment of the workshop. Well, not one more, but we're going to do another installment of the workshop radio. So if you were involved last time, or if you're interested, reach out to me. It's going to be a shorter kind of 4-hour. I'll give you some more information, but just email me at therealtimcook@gmail.com. And with that, let's bring on Val. Hey, Val, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Not bad at all. The intro music didn't blow your eardrums out, did it?
I didn't hear it at all, actually.
You can't. Oh, that's good. I learned something new. So Cake Bear says hello. GK Breyer, do you know Cake Bear?
Probably.
Okay, they said Cake Bear says hi, Valerie. And we got a goober turkey from Blue Sasquatch.
Yeah!
I'm going to get
family.
I was going to say that sounds like a trail name. I don't know much about it. So I met you at SRF this year. Well, last year now, since
Right.
And so tell I always bring everybody in. I like to hear your backstory a bit, and just tell us who Val is, where you grew up. Always got to include what your first high school job, or what I think I know what the answer to this one's going to be, but whatever your first paid employment was, and fill us in a little bit.
Yeah, so I'm a Southern Belle, I guess is a good way to put it. From Alabama, grew up in Alabama. The only time I really not lived in Alabama was when I was serving in the Navy, and I got to travel the world doing that, so that was fun. First job. So my mom owns her own business. She has a lawn care service. So I have been cutting grass, doing maintenance, anything like that since I could walk. So before I could reach a lawnmower, I was picking up sticks. And I was breaking leaves. And then I got to graduate. So when I could reach a lawnmower, I was like, yes, I can stop picking up sticks. I get to cut the grass. And then eventually, after crashing a riding lawnmower and having to earn trust back, then I got to have the fun of using the riding lawnmower eventually.
Years ago, I worked at a camp. So we were like 1 week on with kids and then 1 week doing work, and the place was full of rocks.
Oh,
and I fetched up into a rock and bent the mower blade guard back and drove the blade right through the guard. So I get you. Yeah. So were you the youngest? Do you have brothers and sisters? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm the baby. So I have an older full-blooded brother and then a stepbrother.
Nice. I was just hoping that somebody else come along that could pick up the sticks behind you, somebody younger. But
no,
so that was, you were stuck with that. Yeah. So I got to clarify. You said your mother had a landscaping business, right?
Yeah.
That's cool. So were there many female entrepreneurs in your or female landscapers? Because, without sounding sexist or anything, I don't know very many. So
there's not. So she was the only one for the longest time in the Birmingham area. And I think now I've seen a couple of other ones around town. And a lot of them I feel like aren't doing the maintenance side. They do a lot of the landscape architecture. So they go in and do the designing stuff. But she has, hers is all maintenance. She does some of the designing and installation, but the majority of the stuff that she's ever done has always been maintenance, and which is some of the hardest stuff to do.
Well, sure. And you did it from the time you could, knee high to a grasshopper. So I assume that probably give you a bit of a work ethic, did it?
Oh my gosh, yes, it definitely did. And I feel like when I got to about my teenage years where I was going out and finding other jobs, because if I had another job, then I could be like, Mom, I have to go work. So I didn't have to work for her. So I kind of figured, I picked that up. Sure. Probably about 15, I figured that out. And she kind of gave me the preface of, like, I'd raised you to work really hard. You have a great work ethic. Just be prepared that your employers are going to abuse this. So that was kind of something that I had to learn, and I feel like I still kind of have to learn it with some people, that like you just learn to accept it. Like, I do what I do, and that's who I am, and I'm not going to change who I am just because somebody's going to abuse that.
That's hard. That was something I struggled with for a long time too, because I was always, anybody to ask, sure, I can do that. Yeah, I can do that. And did you ever get in over your head or take on too much because you figured, hey, I can do it?
No, never.
No.
Never, no.
So I bet back in elementary school and junior high, you probably really loved getting a day off from school, did you?
Oh, yeah, no, I don't know what days off from school are. Yeah, when everybody else got to go enjoy spring break, go to the beach, go to the mountains, go have all that fun stuff. No, I had to work.
I mean, yeah, at least like you said, you built yourself a little bit of a work ethic anyhow, right? So
yeah. And that may be why I'm like struggling at the age that I am. Like, feel like I should be able to retire by now, because I've worked for so long. Like, all of the kid years that people got to have fun and be a kid, I had to work.
Well, yeah, I get it. I do. Because that for me, 35, Becky and I were both like, it's time to really start our own business. And entrepreneurship's different. You kind of feel a little bit like, you can't say you're retired. You still work like a bastard, but you get to make your own choices,
Right.
So you said the Navy. How did that come about? How did you end up heading that direction?
So I was in college and really wasn't a huge fan of the major I was doing, and I was having to pay out of pocket.
Which was your major?
So I was going for like a computer science degree. So I moved away from home up to Huntsville, was going to UAH, thought this was going to be a really cool degree. I liked the idea of it. I took the very basic class and started learning about programming. And I'm like, my brain doesn't work like this. I can't do this. Like, sure. I wanted to rip my hair out by just like basic programming, get a screen to pop up a box that you can click on and enter numbers. And if you put letters, it would not let you enter it. Like, just very, very basic stuff. I was like, I can't do this. And I had student loans. I was living on my own. Definitely didn't make enough money to pay my rent where I was living. And I'm like, I got to do something. My dad was in the Navy. My brother had gone in the Army. My grandfather retired Army. So I was like, well, the military's kind of in my family. I like structure. I like order. Military seems like a great thing to do. I chose the Navy because I've always liked hiking, and I didn't want rucksack marching to ruin my enjoy for hiking.
Okay.
So I was like, my dad got to travel a lot in the Navy. The Navy's on the water. I do love the water. Let's try the Navy. So that's where I went.
So what's the Navy equivalent of rucksack hiking? What do they make you do? Swim?
No.
No.
I don't. We really, so it depends on what your job is. So like our CBs, like they kind of do some marching and stuff like that. But other than special forces, the Navy doesn't really do a lot of anything like that.
We can cut out the last part, and you can just somebody's going to cut that out and say that Val said the Navy doesn't do a whole lot of anything. So there we are. So how long were you in the Navy?
So I did 9 years active. I'm still in the reserves right now. I'm at about 13 years. I'll hit 14 years pretty soon.
Okay. How does, being a Canadian, we have the reserves up here, but I'm always an ignorant Canadian, so I got to ask. But how does that work in the reserves? What's the requirements?
So we do 1 weekend a month. 2 weeks out of the year is the minimum that you have to do for a good year, and you have to have a good year to get credit for retirement.
Oh, okay.
So anything more than that, you're making more money, you're getting more points. So you get points for everything you do, and then you have so many points at the end of when you retire, and based on how many points you have, that's how much money you make in your retirement.
And how many years do you have to have in to retire?
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't know about reserve stuff.
Okay.
Because it's all about the points, so I don't remember how many points you have to have, because you get So like on active duty, you get 1 point for every day. So every active duty year you have 365 points.
Oh, okay.
And then I don't remember how I should know this, but I don't.
Oh, it's fine. So, did you go overseas at all in your 9 years? Or
I did. So I lived in Italy for a year and a half, which was amazing. And then I left early. I was supposed to be there for at least 2 years, but I left early because I changed jobs. And so I came back to go to training for my new job. And then when I first came in, so early in my career, I was in Bahrain. So I spent about 10 months in Bahrain. That was really cool. It was a big culture shock. But I learned a lot, and it was I don't know, it was really cool. It was a cool experience.
And then, so what have you done kind of post service time?
So I came off active duty and kind of played Navy for a year, and then went back on active duty. And so I went to DC for a specials assignment, and then that's when I came off that active duty time, I was like, I've always wanted to hike the AT. I was back on the East Coast because I was living on the West Coast prior. My grandfather his health started going downhill really fast. And so I was like, I can move home. I can spend some time and help take care of him and spend some time with him before I go on my hike. And then I've just kind of been here ever since.
So, cool. So, yeah, I had Chuck Peoples on last week, and I don't know if you met Chuck at SRF or not, but
I did.
So I always called it the Appalachian Trail or the Appalachian Mountains. It turns out that you can also call them the Appalachian Mountains, apparently. So that I guess the closer you are from to the mountains, that's the official. So do you know what is it? Appalachian, or can it be?
I say both. I say AT because that's what I feel like. I don't really talk about it unless it's the trail. I don't talk about the mountain range really. When I talk about it, I'm talking about like the trail. So I call it the AT.
Haas says, thank you for your service.
Oh, thanks.
So where did that, okay. I've had friends that have hiked the AT, and I've always been kind of cognizant of it. There was a girl in my freshman year of college who left university to go hike it. And so that's kind of my first idea. And for me to think about hiking, to think about hiking for 5 to 7 months is, I don't know how you wrap your mind around that, but where did that desire come from?
So my dad was a Boy Scout leader when I was a kid. So my first backpacking trip was with Boy Scouts in the Sept wilderness. So it's kind of up north, Alabama towards Huntsville. It's kind of a wilderness area. So that was like, I started and I kind of get the bug. Like it was a lot of fun. I froze. Like I can close my eyes and vividly remember being in my tent freezing on that trip. But I grew up on a farm. Like I love being outside. I love the outdoors. And just like I've always enjoyed hiking. So that kind of like gave me a taste of backpacking. And I've done it off and on most of my life. And then when I lived in Washington State, when I was stationed out there, there's so much backpacking out there. And so that's when I really kind of got back into it and was, okay, this is really cool. I really like being out here where it's secluded, it's quiet, like I can think straight. I think I want to hike because I've thought about the AT. I grew up here in Alabama. The AT is really close to me. I have friends that have hiked sections of it. And I just always, it was always something in the back of my head. Like, it would be really cool if I could do it. But I feel like I never thought that I could.
Sure. Yeah, that's the sensible.
To step away from life. It just never seemed like something. It always seemed like a dream that I could always think of, but I would never accomplish. So
you had a bit of flexible time, flexible schedule, and you thought, hey, why the hell not?
So it just 2020 just worked out to be perfect. Like it was meant for me to do it that year. So I had coming back here, we were still scheduled to do specific trainings for the military. I usually, when I first came in the reserves off active duty, I would always try to get all of my bulk of my training done early in the year. So fiscal year, not calendar year. So end of the year, I would always try to get that done. So then I would have my spring and summer to kind of be flexible and trying to plan stuff. So I had already done my 2 weeks training, which I actually did that, and a whole bunch of my drills, which is what we have to do every month. So I flew up to Washington State and worked for a month straight and knocked out a whole bunch of my requirements for the year.
Nice.
And because I was like, I think I want to do this. I think I'd moved back here. I was really thinking I was going to do it, but then things kept popping up. Like I was supposed to go to Chicago for this conference for my job, for my paralegal job for the Navy. And so I was like trying to figure out like how I was going to come off trail, have to come and get my uniforms, fly to Chicago, come back, drop my gear, get back on trail. I'm like, this is not going to work. I'm not gonna be able to do this. The logistics was a nightmare to try to do.
This was 2020, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think there was something going on then, wasn't there?
Right. Yeah. Something. I really don't know. So like February-ish, stuff started getting canceled. And so I'm like, oh, and then so the conference got canceled. And so like I had already like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to figure it out. Like I'm here. I'm going to just like do whatever the military needs me to do. I'm going to meet my requirements, but I'm hiking this trail. And I'd already talked to my commanding officer. She was fully supportive of like, we will help where we can. Like you can telework on some of the stuff. If you have to telework, I would just like go into town and telework to meet my requirements. Like they were awesome about it. Yeah, like there's no way I could have done it without having the command that I had and the people that I had like in the military supporting me to do it, which was amazing. But so they canceled everything. And so then I was like, I don't have to plan the logistics. I can just do this.
Sure.
And so I was like, I'm doing it. Like this is happening.
So what time of the year did you decide that you're going to do it? Do you remember?
So my plan when I moved back in the winter of 19, my plan was to leave in March after my mom's birthday. I was like, I'll celebrate my mom's birthday. And then that weekend after her birthday, at the end of March, that I was like, I can leave then. That'll give me a really good window where I won't be rushed. Because I knew it was going to take about 6 months. That's the average that it takes people is 6 months to hike it. I really wanted to start earlier, but I just wanted to be here for my mom's birthday. And so that was my original plan was then. And then my grandfather went downhill really fast. And so like, I wasn't comfortable stepping away yet. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go. I'm just not ready yet. And so I ended up not leaving until May. And
wow.
So it was that. And then like there was word that they closed the Smoky Mountains because there were hikers on trail. And then I was like following people that I knew that were hiking and they're like, the Smokies are closed. You can't even hike through. I'm like, well, if the Smokies are closed, what the heck am I going to do? So I was trying to pay attention to what the Forest Service was putting out and what other people were putting out because of what was going on during that time. And I was trying to be cognizant, whatever there was going on, the best way that I kind of knew how to. So that played a really big role in me pushing it. But I never was like, if I start in May, I'm going to do it. Like I started and I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to finish this, but I have to try.
Yeah. So May, Jesus, that takes you into November in Maine. Is that because,
yeah.
Okay. Almost everyone goes south to north, right?
Right.
Unless you're crazy. Is that the idea or a really fast hiker? How does that work?
So I'm a Nobo through and through. So that means I was northbound. So going south to north. So, I feel like I have to have the opinion that Sobos are crazy because Nobo's the only way to go because that's the way that we went. So I feel like going south, like coming southbound is a lot harder early on.
I grew up in Nova Scotia, which is basically the Canadian version of Maine. So I know what the weather's like. Actually, the last few years it's been really good, but traditionally the weather's really shitty in, if you want to start, well, you'd have to start fairly, I don't know, when do southbound hikers typically start? Maybe a little later?
They do. So they have to, because the key is getting up to Katahdin. So Katahdin freezes over and they'll close the trails down where you can't even get up there. And it's really treacherous. Like there's a lot of people that have lost their lives trying to hike Katahdin in bad weather.
Yes, sir.
So it's trying to time to be able to summit and then hit trail. Cause you can't, so for southbounders, like they can't hang out there at Baxter State Park and camp without like having a reservation, and getting a reservation during hiking season is really, really hard. So they have to like summit, hit the trail, and then you're right in the 100-mile wilderness immediately, which is what it is. It's a 100-mile wilderness.
Now, I don't know how I know some of these things. I think I've picked them up. But so like, if you start south to north, you acclimatize a little better, like as far as the trail's a little easier. Is that right? Or am I wrong?
So it's all about perspective. Like, so from coming from south to north, the trail is hard.
Okay. When
you're coming north to south, because you are doing the hardest section, like really the hardest climbs, with if you're not really prepping, like you don't have trail legs yet. So you're doing like the biggest, hardest climbs on trail without having the trail legs to really be able to like do it without a lot of pain and a lot of planning. Because like when we got up to Maine and even like New Hampshire and Vermont, like I remember looking at my tramline going, oh my gosh, I don't know what this was like. We're seeing Sobos because we're passing each other.
Okay.
And I'm like, how are you guys so walking right now? Because I have muscles built up from the last 1,000+ miles that I've already hiked, and I'm in pain. And y'all don't have these muscles. Like, how are you walking?
Are they the occasional brand? Like, I could imagine if you've hiked the trail once or twice before, that going north to south might be a little more, advantageous. But do some people do that as their first go?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of people that do it, and I think it's like they're like how just trying to fit it in their schedule, so they can't start earlier. So for them to be able to go into the winter months, they start north and come south, or they'll flip flop. So flip flopping is a big thing too. So you hike from north to south, and then usually in where's it at? In West Virginia, they'll flop down and they'll hike back up to West Virginia, or they'll hike south to north to West Virginia and then jump up to Katahdin and then hike south to West Virginia.
Oh,
so it all just depends on like your schedule, if you have a job that you're trying to do, or you're trying to fit it between school. There's so many different ways to do it, and one way is not really any better than the other. It's just what works for you. So
from the time that a person, I guess, so if somebody who's thinking, all right, I'd like to do this, they're crazy enough that they want to, which is awesome. I think it's really cool. How much time do you need to allow yourself from the day you make the decision till the day you arrive, at mile 1 or whatever?
So like prepping?
Yeah.
Ooh, that's hard. So if I would say like, if you're really dedicated to it and you really want to make the sacrifices and really hit trail prepared to stay on trail, because there's a lot of people that they do the stuff, they get on trail and they're not mentally ready for what it is, because it's a big physical battle, but it is such more of a mental battle than anything. And that's what I feel like a lot of people end up coming off trail, because the mental battle that they're facing is so much harder than they really ever thought it was going to be. You could do it. I feel like I gave myself at least 6 months. Like that's what I tried to prep for, like focus, like I'm going to do this. And I spent about 6 months, like prepping, going through gear, testing gear, like researching how I wanted to do things. But I feel like if you want to do it, don't feel like you need to plan that far. Cause I changed my gear so much on trail, because I did shakedown hikes. I did so much stuff thinking that I was like, when I started, I wasn't going to change my gear. I was in it. I'd honed in, but I changed my pack on trail. I changed my sleeping pad. I changed my cook stove, like what I cooked with 3 times. I changed like what I hiked in, like my clothing a bunch of different times, because you're trying to figure out what works for you and what's comfortable for you. And like, you can watch all the YouTube videos you want, and that's it's great input. Like it gives you ideas about, okay, I need to think about this or that, but you really don't know until you actually get out and do it. And doing shakedown hikes, I would say, that are less than 3 days, you're really not going to push yourself, because you're not going to be really tired and exhausted and having to deal with gear. And like, okay, I don't like when I'm really hiking, I don't want to deal with this crap.
Right.
So I don't want this piece of gear that works like this, because you're going to be exhausted every day. And so if you don't push yourself to your exhaustion and to like that point of really honing in what you really want and what is going to make you happy and what's the easiest for you, then you end up, you can spend a lot of time wasted trying to plan.
So a shakedown hike is like short prepping hike or, preparedness hikes you do. So you would say that it's important to make them long enough that you're feeling it?
I would definitely, especially when and I changed my shoes too. Like, so I started with trail runners that I thought worked for me. And so the shoes that I started with were great for about 7 miles. Anything more than a 7 mile day, like awful, so much pain. And I didn't realize that until I had pushed myself past, and I was like, and my feet hurt some, but your feet hurt. Like I feel like that's just one thing that comes with the trail is, and maybe not everybody does. Maybe I've just got damage to mine from the military and just from being on my feet for a lot of my life. But for me, like until I started getting more than 7 miles a day, I didn't realize that the shoes that I had were terrible. So doing a shakedown hike where you're really pushing yourself and pushing your gear too to see what works.
So how do you set yourself up for success on the trail? Like, you talked about how you tested your gear beforehand and, and of course, like everything, what do they say that the best plans in the world never survive the first contact, and which is great. But so how did you, I hear about people who, ship themselves food drops and that kind of stuff, or so what are some of the things you did to kind of make it a little more successful for you, or at least attempt it?
Yeah. So I went in like really kind of strict about some things, and then I like giving yourself grace and giving yourself forgiveness for not meeting, like having a daily goal of, I mean, I don't like, depending on how you want to start off, like I thought that I had prepped and was like ready. But then when I got on trail, like I did 7 miles a day up until about the Smokies. And like, that's, if you have a good 6+ months to hike, like that's not a bad place to start. But I didn't. I mean, I had to be, because they usually close Katahdin down October.
Okay.
Like 15 October, Katahdin's almost never been open. So I knew 15 October was my max deadline, had to be there. So I had to push myself more than I really wanted to, but I had done a lot of mental prep. Like, okay, when I have bad days like this, like having a lot of self-talk and positive self-talk, and then having a great family that like builds you up too. And then like I had like one of the things, so one of my best friends hiked in 2017. And so he, like having someone that's already done it, that can really coach you through it and kind of prep you the mental battles that you're going to face. That's so, so big. I feel like, so one thing that a lot of people say is like, never quit on a bad day. Always quit on a good day, because tomorrow is going to be a different day. And that's what, like, there were days where I'm like my worst day on trail, I remember like sitting on the side of trail, just like bawling my eyes out. Like, what am I doing? Why am I here? I just want to go home. Like, I don't want to be here anymore. And I was like, I can't quit on it's a bad day. I can't quit on a bad day. If tomorrow I have a good day and I still want to go home, I'll go home, but I'm not quitting on a bad day.
I think that's pretty damn good advice for life in general.
Yeah.
I've given it
bad
many.
Days suck, but don't let that be the reason you quit.
Right. Because you get, I mean, I can't speak from experience from hiking, but I can from in business. And I know there's some pretty dark days. And if you make a decision in a dark day, whether, I don't think it, make a good or bad decision on a dark day can come back to haunt you. So that's great advice.
Yeah.
So, you talked about is it Tramley? Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
What is that?
So it's your trail family.
Okay. The people you meet along the way, or people you.
So the people that I called my family were the people that I hiked with and I really interacted with, and I like bonded with. So when I started, there were 2 ladies. They were I call them my trail sisters. So that's who I started with and hiked till about the other side of the Smokies. They were way faster than I was and a lot better shape than I was. So they like smoked me. One of them, so she started the day that I started, and she summited like 2 or 3 weeks before me.
Wow.
She was awesome. She was smoking it. But I loved hiking with them because they pushed me way harder than I would have ever pushed myself. And then I met a couple of other people later in the trail, and those are the people that I hiked with. And I say hiked with, but you really camp with them. Because
Right.
a lot of people, I mean, everybody's pace is different. And so that's what, we would hike certain sections together, but it was really people that I camped with. And that's like when you went in town and resupplied, instead of buying a whole thing of like a bulk piece of, I don't know, like instant breakfast, and you buy 6 of them, and I'm like, well, I only need 3. But if you have somebody with you, like, hey, do you want these other 3? So you're not like, it helps you not waste food. Like you go in and buy food together and split things up together. I mean, they just become your family. Like that's who you depend on for so much on trail.
So do you spend the majority of your time while hiking alone then?
I did. I feel like because of my pace.
Sure.
I was like trying to go through some of the stuff that like to refresh my memory, and I was sitting there thinking like I was always the last to leave camp and the last to come into camp.
Okay.
That was my pace. Like I wasn't, especially early on, like I was in terrible shape. I got such bad leg cramps and knee pains. Like I have knee injuries. So like I was stopping and taking a million breaks and taking way longer than I probably really should have. So I hiked a lot by myself. Usually everybody was already gone by the time, or they were like leaving as I'm rolling out of my tent. I'm like, oh, hey, good morning, guys. And they're like putting their packs on and getting ready to go. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to enjoy my coffee. I'll see y'all down the trail.
So the alone time, I mean, I guess that's probably part of the intrigue or the part of the enjoyment of it as well. But did you let yourself get lost in your own thoughts, or did you like pack a lot of audiobooks or podcasts, or what did you do?
So a little bit of both. So I listened to a lot of books. I listened to a lot of podcasts, a lot of music. And I feel like a lot of the music I listened to, I actually listened to when I was with some of my family.
Okay.
So Goober Turkey that said the hey early on. So his trail name is LG.
Okay.
And there were many, many days that LG and I were like jamming out to some music. And anybody other hikers that came up next to us were probably mad because I had it on speaker. Like we didn't have headphones on. We were singing and like having a great time. So there were moments of like that. And then I feel like there were moments where I was in my head and kind of processing life and processing. So I lost my grandfather my first night on trail.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's all good.
Take your time. You're good, man. I didn't. No, I got
It was really cool because I processed that and I got to have that time. So it was awesome. But oh my gosh! So one of my favorite books I listened to. I don't know if you're a big C.S. Lewis fan.
I follow his philosophy in college a lot. I didn't read.
So
much
I listened to almost all of his books. But so listening to the Chronicles of Narnia when you're in the woods,
sure.
So there's no noise and you're like listening to the descriptions and like what's going on. And I'm like, it was a whole nother experience of listening to the books. Those were my favorite books that I listened to on trail because it was just really cool to be in nature and listen to the imagery that he talks about in those books.
Is there cell service along the trail much or
yes.
No?
There is. Okay. My friend like that hiked it kind of told me there's a couple of spots when he hiked it in 2017 that he didn't have service. And so I had like, I prefaced my family, like, if you don't hear from me in a day, like I will check in with you. And I had a tracker where they could actually get on Google Maps and see where I was. So I'm like, so if you don't hear from me within 2 days, send somebody to come looking for me. But I feel like I never really lost service. Like there's so many cell towers they put on like close enough to the trail that I streamed, I feel like some stuff at shelters at night, watching something like watching TV shows.
That's great. That's insane.
I know, right?
So is that a good thing or a bad thing? I mean, okay, I guess I'm going to guess as a single hiker, whether you're male or female, having connection to the outside world would probably help. But what do you think? Because a lot of it before was, the idea was to get away from everything, right?
So I think it's a balance. So it's being able to like when you feel like you need to have that connection, because if you're having a bad day, or you're, for whatever reason, like you're struggling with your hike, like you can reach out and have that connection with people still. And then if you really just kind of want some solitude, like it's easy to put your phone in airplane mode and kind of do your thing. So it's kind of, I think it's kind of cool to have the option, so that if you're, depending on, your state of mind that you're in at that moment, then you can have that choice.
Do you remember you said you had a GPS tracker on you. Do you remember the brand or the name of it at all?
So I just use Google Maps.
Oh, okay.
So I did the share my location, and then I sent it out to my friend that had hiked it. So I sent it to him because I knew that if something happened and they had to come find me, he knew where to come find me.
Sure.
So he had shared my location, and then both of my parents, I think both of my parents. I feel like my dad and my mom had it. So it was just Google Maps.
Okay, that's a low tech and easy way to do it then.
And it didn't cost anything.
So when you talked about you had your music on speaker, is that like I'm sure there's a lot of unwritten rules and etiquette and things on the trail. Is that kind of against etiquette or no, not really?
Yeah, it kind of is. Because I mean, if you're out there hiking and you want the solitude and quiet, and then you walk up on somebody that's like music blaring, you're like, what the crap, dude? Like, I came out here for some solitude. So it's just trying to be respectful to people around you. I usually, when we were doing that, it was normally when we knew we weren't close to anybody else. And if we saw us coming up on somebody, I would mute it and turn it off just out of respect. Because that's what I would want to do. So I always tried to be courteous to people the way that I would want people to be courteous to me on trail.
How about, how long could you go without resupply while you were on the trail?
So it varied, and it was kind of like your choice. So like I had a stove, so I had different kinds of food for people like that didn't cook. So they had either they cold soaked it, so they would put it in water and put it in a container and let it soak to eat. Or they just ate food that they didn't have to soak or whatever. They ate junk food. So what kind of food you ate depended on how long your resupply really and truly was. I feel like the longest that I went, I think I had 6 days at some point. And leaving town that day was awful because I'm like full pack of food and water, and it was normally a mountain to climb because every trail town you like come down into the town and then you climb out of it. So you're coming into it like no food, empty pack, like light on your feet. It's awesome. You're gonna get some good trail food, and then you come out of it with a heavy pack of food. Like, why did I pack all of this food? This mountain really sucks.
So did you mail anything to yourself ahead of time, or did you just pick up along the way?
So I did mail myself some stuff. I had planned when I originally started, like, I'm going to mail most of my food to save money, to save time. But I got to where, like, you get cravings on trail where you want certain things. And that usually wasn't what you mailed yourself.
Sure.
And so like forcing yourself to eat something that like, I've already paid for this to come out here. I'm going to eat this. And you're like choking it down. I'm like, oh, this is not what I wanted. So I just because of what was going on during the time that I hiked.
Right. Yes, you can say COVID. It's okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're good.
So there weren't a lot of hikers. So when we went to town, we never had issues with resupply because there weren't a lot of hikers on trail buying up the food that was like hiker friendly food. We never had issues. I never had issues with resupply. And so like when I kind of figured that out, I'm like, well, this is cheaper for me to just figure out so if you try to resupply yourself, then you're trying to guess how many days you're going between your resupplies.
Sure.
And it varied on how many miles we wanted to do, and did we want to skip this town or did we want to go into this town? Like, trying to plan it out way ahead, it ended up not making sense for my hike. So I didn't. Like, I got to where I bought everything when I went in town.
So when you say go into the town, do they tend to be, do you have to spend a few hours to hike into the towns, or are they basically right on trail, or?
So it varies. So some of them, the trail goes right through the middle of the towns. There's some that they're not close to a town at all. Like, so if you have a road crossing, and a lot of times like people would plan and not go into those towns because they just didn't want to waste time. For whatever reason they didn't. And so like those, you either hitchhike to get into town, you call a shuttle. There's a lot of shuttles that go and drive hikers in and out of town. And then there's some that you could hike to as well. It'd be like a mile or two hike to get to a store that you could buy food at.
Now I know you said the price wasn't too bad. Do some places kind of stick it to the hikers a little bit? Like it seems like it would be the type of thing where they have a captive audience, or are they pretty good?
So I don't know, because you don't know other than what you see.
Fair enough.
So I don't remember anything like standing out. Like, okay, well, I bought this pack of ramen noodles, 3 cities ago, and they're charging $1 more. Like, it wasn't anything like that. So so some places did charge. So like when you go to the lake, and if you go to the shop at the lake, usually you're going to pay more money for it because it's a convenience, right?
Sure.
So there were those kinds of things. So there were some of the places that they were the only store that had food within miles and miles and miles. So whether it was hikers or people driving, like, you paid more. So it wasn't specifically, I don't think, towards hikers. It was just, we're a convenience store in the middle of nowhere. It costs us more money to get it here, so we're going to charge you. There was an upcharge for buying from them.
What about, you said there was times when you decided to swap out shoes or packs or stoves. Is that kind of stuff right there as well, or did you have to go a little further off trail to find some of that?
So it was kind of both. There's a lot of places that have been smart and made gear shops like right on trail. So the trail towns that are really close, that they know people normally get off to do resupplies, they have gear shops. And then a lot of people, so REI is a great thing because REI, you can sense a FAQ, which is when you're trying to figure out your gear, is a great option.
Okay.
So there's a lot of people they'll order something online and have it sent to like a hostel or a post office box, and they'll hold your packages for you. Oh. And then you can kind of, if you go into that hostel or a post office, then you can get your gear there too, if you know what you want. So like once I figured out what shoes I wanted, I feel like I might have actually ordered a bunch because I feel like I caught some on sale. And so I ordered like 3 pairs and had them sent to my mom's house. And then I had her mail them to me when I needed them throughout the trail.
That's great. I never thought about it, but you could, at this point in this day and age, you could literally order from REI online from trail and have it shipped to 2 or 3 stops ahead of you.
I did it on Amazon too for a couple of things on Amazon.
Isn't that the craziest thing? That's awesome.
Yeah. So hiking these days is very, very different than it was 15 years ago.
Well, that's what the girl named Cynthia that I knew. I mean, that would have been in, I don't know, 2000, 2001, something like that. So yeah. That would have been, that's crazy, but that's cool. I mean, everything changes, right?
And it matters the trail too. So the AT is a great first trail for anybody that's really interested in through hiking and wanting to do a long through hike because of all of these things. So like when you go out to the Pacific Crest Trail, the PCT or the CDT, it's a whole nother animal because there's not the big community around them like the AT has. They don't have the trail towns like they do on the AT. The resources are very different. Like you have to plan. So like if there's anybody that wants to do those trails, like definitely do your research on those because it's literally a whole different world out there than it is for the AT. So
start with the AT is what you're saying.
I would. I mean, if you want to do a long distance, like a really good through hike that's more than, a couple of 100 miles, the AT is a great one to start at because there's a lot of forgiveness there. It's easy. Like if something happens and you need to get off trail, it's pretty easy to get to a trail town. You're really not in the wilderness. I mean, if you ever get on I remember getting on maps and zooming out and I'm like, wow, I'm really not that far out away from things. Like it's quiet and you have the solitude, but in the grand scheme of things, you're really not that far from help if you needed it.
That's cool. You just picture it of like so far off the beaten trail and way in the woods. And you always think you're a helicopter ride away from somewhere, but I guess I never thought about it, but yeah, you're really not that far from anywhere.
That are. So like up in Maine and stuff, like you get a little bit more solitude. So like the 100-mile wilderness, that's the biggest stretch of, it's not easy to get to you if something happens on, and that's like the last 100 miles before you get to Summit and Katahdin.
Maine's like that in general. I mean, the highways there are miserable. You can go, oh yeah, it's something else. So how long did it take you from start to finish?
So it took me 149 days, so about 5 months, right at the mark.
You made really good time then.
I had to. I had no choice. And And I would say that I can't give myself credit for that. It was my family. Like the people that I hiked with pushed and like they did big miles. And so I did big miles because I wanted to be with them. I wanted to like camp with them and spend time with them because like they were amazing people. And so I was like, I'll just fight through my pain and deal with this thing so that I can hang out with them. So I pushed and stayed with who I was with.
Do you remember your longest amount in a day? How far you went?
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Yeah.
So there's it's called the 4 State Challenge. It's
okay.
You hear people talk about, I'd never heard of it before I got on trail. So I didn't like, probably most people that have never been on trail don't know about it because it doesn't matter to anybody other than if you're on trail. So it's literally hiking, like stepping foot in 4 states in one day. So it's a minimum of 43 miles.
Oh shit. Okay.
Yeah. So you leave, let's see if I can remember this. You leave Virginia and you go into West Virginia. Oh my gosh, this is bad. I should know this. Connecticut. No. Maryland, sorry.
Okay, that's fine. Whatever.
So
yeah.
It's Pennsylvania to West Virginia to Maryland into PA, into Pennsylvania.
Okay. So and you did it?
Yeah.
How many hours was that? Do you remember?
Oh, it took us 17, I think.
Oh my God. Okay.
So I remember, so we were like, we camped right up the mountain from the state line to get out of Virginia into West Virginia. Cause West Virginia is a big, they have like a big museum there. People usually do like a big hiker picture. It's just like a big thing to do there. So we camped right up from that. We got up at, I feel like we got up at like 3 a.m. It was dark. And we hiked down the mountain, hiked through West Virginia in the dark. And
wow.
I think we saw the sun come up. We saw the sun come up in West Virginia, but like way, way down. And then we finished when we got into PA. It was dark, of course. I'm trying to remember what time it was exhausting. It was a long, long day. Did
you take an off day the next day?
Yes, we did do a 0.
0, that's what, okay. Yeah, which makes sense. So what do you do on a 0 day?
Relax, do laundry, get food supplies, go eat everything in sight. And just, I feel like most of my 0s I spent either like planning or doing resupplies, because normally going into it, I'd already planned out how much food I needed just to save time, and then just like relaxing. So getting off of my feet, soaking my feet in ice water, massaging my feet, doing laundry so that I didn't smell as bad as I normally smelled.
When you walked off trail at the end, could you have walked further, or were you mentally ready to be done?
So mentally I could have gone further. My feet were done. And that's what, like, I was talking with LG the other day about this. Like, there's people that do the Triple Crown in a year. So they do all 3 trails in 1 year, which is amazing to me. And they obviously have really amazing feet, or they can't feel their feet. Right. Because, like, that was, like, what I was looking forward to. Like, I just want to be done so I can stop walking because my feet hurt so bad. They call them Christmas toes. So you lose feeling in your toes. So I lost feeling in all of my toes. And I didn't regain feeling it was a couple of months before I regained like full feeling in my toes. Cause it was probably nerve damage from just being on them. Jesus.
Do you get I don't, when I used to occasionally lobster fish. And so, if you spent, some 20, 22 hour days on the boat, when you came in, you still, especially after 5 or 6 days of being on the boat, you kind of still felt like you're on a boat,
Mm-hmm.
When you lay down at night, did you kind of feel like you were still hiking, or is that weird?
No, I wouldn't say like when I laid down that I felt like I was hiking, but I feel like my brain was still on the, like, how many days until I get resupply? How much food do I need for like that pattern of thinking of, how many miles am I doing today? Okay. What are we doing tomorrow? Like that planning and trying to figure out like what is the next big obstacle to overcome to finish this thing.
There was so there's a lot of math on trail then, hey?
Yeah, I guess kind of.
Just calculations maybe be the way to put it.
Yeah, so the app that I use for my hike, that helps a lot. So I could figure out, okay, this is where our food is. Okay, how many miles is it till then? And then how much food how many miles do we really want to do? Is there anywhere in that section that we want to stop and spend more time at? So then we would do a shorter day so we could spend more time doing that. And so you just take that number and then figure out how many miles you want to do a day. And then that's how you figure out how much to do in your resupply. Like, how much food do you need for your resupply? And then I always had like at least another half a day.
That's what I was going to ask. Did you have a buffer zone?
I always did, because I hit hiker hunger once really bad when I was in Virginia. So hiker hunger is like, you literally cannot feed, like, how you're just everything you eat and you're not feeding that. Like, you're so hungry.
Is that a physical thing or a mental thing? Or do you know?
Probably both.
Okay.
So like I hit that really bad in Virginia, and I just like, I ended up having, I was like, I'm not hiking anymore. I'm going into town. I'm so hungry. Like, I need food. I had food in my pack, but I couldn't force myself to eat any of it. And I felt like I was starving. And so I went into town. And so after that, I was like, I need at least a half a day buffer for food, so that if I have something in my pack that I'm like, I really don't want that right now, then I had something else to choose from.
That's crazy. So even after hiking, 10 or 12 miles in a day, you still, if you only had one option, there were still times you weren't in the mood for it. Hey.
Mm-hmm.
And how often do you eat on the trail?
I usually had oatmeal every morning with my coffee. And then I would have I'd have snacks throughout the day. So like power bars or jerky, and then one big meal at night.
Do you stop at all during the day, or once you start moving, do you basically just keep making miles the whole day?
So it varied. So there were days where like I really didn't stop very much, because if we were doing big miles and as slow as I was, and if there was things that I wanted to stop and enjoy, so I would make sure that like those places that I knew I wanted to stop and get pictures or like explore, then I would make sure that like if I was going to have lunch, I would have lunch on the trail, like on movement. I wouldn't stop for my lunch. I would keep moving. But then sometimes I would stop and like take an hour break. If it was really, really hot, usually during the hottest part of the day, like I would try to make sure I would try to plan it to be at a water supply so I could cool my feet, drink as much water as I wanted, so I wasn't having to carry out as much water, and then just kind of be strategic with that.
So you mentioned about a couple of times now, I've heard you say, plan ahead if there's something you wanted to see, or stop and enjoy something. How important is that? Because, me, I'm a goal guy, and I just want to complete something, right? And going along, how important is it to stop and smell the roses, or whatever you want to call it?
Oh, it's so important. And like, I look back now, I would love to actually go do it again and have 7 months to hike it, so that I could like get to, so then if it was like, there were days that I literally would hike 8 hours in the rain. So, I probably did, but I felt like I didn't have any other choice. Like, I felt like I had to get down trail. Like, I could not take those days off, because I knew I would have to have zeros. And so it was, if I sacrifice this day in the rain where I really don't want to be, I'm not in a trail town where I can take a zero and maximize my efficiency. So I think it is important, if you're planning it, to try to plan in those days and those grace periods of like, if it's a beautiful place and the weather's really great, sit and enjoy it, because you may never make it back there again.
So when you first started, did you say, were there actual people that started with you, or did you just kind of meet them at the trailhead and went along for a bit?
Oh yeah, I started by myself. I like went on trail fully intentions of like, I'll probably meet people, but I'm out here hiking by myself, and I'm cool with that.
How is that for a single lady, by yourself? Is there, I'm sure, certain considerations and that sort of thing, but how is that nowadays?
So I feel like and I can only speak, of course, for the AT. I think that the community out there is really out to watch for hikers, and especially for females. So I had 2 situations on trail that I got really uncomfortable. And so there was a guy that was hiking around the same area with me. I just got a really weird vibe from him. I've always known to trust my gut.
Yep.
And so I had, my friend that had hiked before had sent me contacts throughout the trail. And he was like, if you have issues, reach out to them, because they're right off trail. So I messaged them, hey, this is where I'm at. I feel really uncomfortable. I don't know what's going on. What do I need to do? And so they were like, send us a picture of him, tell us where you are. And so like doing that made me feel better. Like if something happens, they have a picture of this dude, they know what's going on. And I kind of told some of the other guys that were hiking around me, like, hey, this guy kind of makes me really uncomfortable. And they would run him off.
Okay.
So like they're like I would say 98% of the guys on trail are out there looking out for everybody, whether you're a female or a male. Like they're out there to experience things, not to have drama. And so if there's people that are trying to cause issues, like they'll run them off.
So are they people like that? Are they typically like day hikers or partial, like not typically going?
There's some through hikers too. Like this dude was a through hiker, I think.
Okay.
I just got a weird vibe from him. I don't know. He finally separated from us. Like we didn't see him for the rest of trail. And I don't know if he jumped ahead. If somebody said something to him like, hey, you're making people in this group uncomfortable, you should probably go jump ahead and get away from this group. But there were like people that lived in the shelters too. So like there's homeless people that live in some of the shelters that are close to the roads.
Okay.
So the app that I use, most of the thru hikers were really good about putting messages like, hey, there's a homeless guy that lives at this shelter, don't stay here, or don't stay long, or just be weary, or if somebody got a weird vibe from them, like, hey, skip this shelter if you can, don't, steer clear because there's this homeless person that's just hanging out here and something's going on.
Is there any like forestry or any patrol or anything like that along the trails or the shelters?
There are in certain sections, but I think those people that are homeless and trying to live in the shelters, they look for the shelters that people don't really. They're either on private property or they're on like weird state land that nobody knows really who has jurisdiction.
Right.
So there's nobody really going and checking it.
We've got about 19 questions or comments. You good with working through some of them? And
yeah,
if things pop up as we go along, I'll keep
Definitely.
asking. But let's. Everybody's been patient. They've had a lot asked. So I guess we kind of touched on this. But the first one was, how do you resupply on the trail? So for you, it was mostly just picking it up in town.
Yeah, I just went into whatever trail, wherever I was out of food or planned, then I would just go to those stores. Like it was gas stations. Like we resupplied at gas stations a lot of times.
Okay. And they probably know their clientele, so they keep things, or
I think so. And like I don't know, like you just get creative. You figure out what to make meals out of, because usually everybody's got tuna packets. So you could do tuna and some crackers and get you through if you needed to in certain sections, knowing that like in a day or two, you're going to get legit food.
Was there anything by the end of the trail that you just don't want to eat anymore?
Oh my gosh, the smell of a Cliff Bar makes me want to vomit.
Okay, because they're going to be in every friggin' gas station, right? So
and we had like funny stories. So we, my family and we always played jokes and pranks on each other. Like it's just part of like being around someone for that long. That's just kind of how it gets.
Sure.
So we had a traveling Cliff Bar that we would sneak into each other's packs. And so you wouldn't find it until you were like at camp, pulling stuff out of your pack. And you're like, you got me. Like I've been carrying this stupid Cliff Bar, which they don't weigh anything, but it's like, I'm carrying weight for somebody else. I can't believe you put this in my pack. And it made it all the way to Maine from Virginia, I think. Like us sneaking it in each other's packs the whole way. And then these mice found it in Maine and ate it. And we were like, no, not the Cliff Bar.
At least it made a good story and you got rid of it in the end, right?
It did. And we fed some mice. So...
Haas wants to know, how did you keep yourself safe? Did you carry, or what are the rules about carrying on the AT?
So I carried mace. That was the only thing that legally I could carry without possibly getting in trouble. So you're going through Forest Service lands and Forest Service federal lands, you can't have a firearm on.
Really?
Yeah, especially without a permit. And so you would have to get a permit for each state. And I think some of them will give you like a temporary permit for it. But you're going on people's private properties. Like it was just going to be, my plan originally was to carry.
Okay.
Just because I feel more comfortable having it on me. Like I've always felt more comfortable with having something on me.
Sure.
But when I started looking through all the hoops you have to jump through and all the problems that could possibly happen, and there's a lot of people on trail that are anti-gun. And so the moment that they see that you have it, they're going to call the cops on you.
No shit. I suppose.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And so I was like, I don't want to ruin my hike or them mess up my hike, or I was like, it's just not worth it. And they're heavy. Like when you're carrying everything that you live in on your back, weight matters. Like everything matters. And a firearm would be a luxury item, unfortunately. And it wasn't a luxury item that I really wanted to carry.
That's fair.
And I feel like this is like to carry it, you can't open carry.
Right.
So to have it where you're not open carrying it, but then also where you can get to it in time for if something happened, like it just didn't make sense because it would be in your pack. So by the time you like went through all of that to get your firearm out, I don't remember if there were places that you couldn't carry it actually like one in the chamber. So by the time you get it out, chamber it, safety off, on target.
Right.
It just wasn't like, to me, it wasn't worth it.
That makes sense. So where'd you keep your mace? Pocket or around your neck? Or
I had it hanging right next to me. So I had a MKT neck knife, which I know
I was going to ask about your knife too. Yeah. Yes. I love my neck knife. So I had a neck knife always. I feel like I had my neck knife on one side of my pack on my shoulder, and then I had my mace on the other side. Okay.
But I never got into a situation where I really felt like I needed it.
Sure.
There was one that I was like, if it's going to happen, like if something's going to happen, this is going to be it. And I was just kind of like processing like, okay, if this happens, this is what I'm going to do. And like, thought through the process and kind of had my hands on my shoulders and just like hanging out. But I never like unclipped my mace and had it in my hand.
That's cool.
It was never like that.
Any run-ins with animals?
No, they run from you. Like that's the good thing about like the AT and this side of the U.S. Like, bears run from you, porcupines run from you, like skunks run from you, hogs run from, like any animal that we ever encountered, like they saw us and they were like, you could see their butts as they're trying to get away from you. They did not want nothing to do with you.
Snakes?
Yeah.
I'm not
So my worst day on trail was an encounter with some rattlesnakes. But the situation I was in was kind of weird. But for the most part, the timber rattlers they want to get away from you. Like they're not, unless you corner them and they feel threatened, like they're going to go about their business. So most of the snakes, like if they got close enough and I had my trekking pole, I was usually bumping them with my trekking pole, like, go on, get out of here. Or I would try to figure out a way to get around them. Like overall, it wasn't that bad other than that one day, but you know, it is what it is.
What do you, any precautions you take while you're camping, or is it not? Like where you sleep, like your shelters? Do you mostly sleep in shelters or no?
I did both. I slept a lot in the shelter when it was warmer and before the bugs really set in. Like I like straight up in the shelter because I was tired. I didn't feel like setting my tent up. I didn't want to take my tent down in the morning. Like I was being lazy, and so I slept in shelters, which I liked it. It was fun.
I was going to shout out to we got Porterhouse and Teal on here. Did you meet Porterhouse at SRF?
Yeah.
They're on. He said Teal and I laughed at the Cliff Bar comment. Still can't eat a Cliff Bar after being on trail.
Yes.
I love Porterhouse. He's kicking ass and taking names on YouTube. If anybody's out there.
So him and I sat back in the back of the gravel behind the tent talking. He was awesome to talk to.
Oh, I could talk to him all day.
Yes, definitely.
Next question, Clark. Ignorant Canadian question, which would be one I would ask as well. But one of your Tramley, I think, answered it in the comments, but I wanted to get you so we could have it in the audio too. But where does the AT start and where does it end?
So it starts down in Georgia at Emmacola Falls is where a lot of people say it starts, but technically the trail starts at Springer Mountain in Georgia, and then it goes all the way to Katahdin, Maine. And
don't they have an Appalachian Trail that continues into Canada now?
Yeah, so they call it the International Appalachian Trail. So it goes up, so you go up Katahdin, and then I'm not really sure how it gets over there, but that's you come down Katahdin, and then you snake back over up into Canada.
Since I've been in junior high, they've been working on the Trans-Canada Trail. So I think it might be quote unquote complete. I'm not sure, but it's interesting. I mean, that's
cool.
That's a long way.
Yeah.
What's your favorite trail mix?
Ooh,
or did you?
So I always make my own. I like Reese Pieces, which you almost never see in a trail mix.
Right. Oh, I love
because I
it.
just like the peanut butter and chocolate mix. Because I love peanut butter is my favorite, and I ate peanut butter all the time on trail and never got tired of it, and still love it. So I would do Reese Pieces, peanut M&Ms, some of the pretzel sticks to kind of add a little bit of a different texture, and then some Chex Mix sometimes. But and some nuts. Like I would always throw in like some cashews and some almonds just to kind of give a little crunch. I really didn't eat a lot of trail mix though on trail. Just
if you had to, or kind of.
It's so chocolate is funny on trail because of the heat. And so it mixes and mushes, and it's not the textures are all weird and gets crazy, and it just like being in your pack, it just gets disintegrated to powder.
Sure.
So I just never like. Sometimes I would get them for like the first day out of a resupply. So if I knew, I would get like a small bag to eat as like my lunch for the first day out because I knew it wasn't going to be in my pack. But I really didn't eat a lot of it.
What was the next? Haas? How long did you hike each day before resting? I guess in hours, because you said you started kind of at 7 miles and then worked your way up as you went along. But what was a typical like 9 to 5 hike, or what did you?
I would say it was about 8 hours, yeah, at least, depending on how many I was doing and like what the terrain was like. So like up in New Hampshire and Maine, go like 12 miles there took 8 hours because you're boulder climbing up these mountains, and going up is the easy part. The hard part is coming down off of those boulders. And so you're having to like drop yourself down depending on how it is, and like throw trekking poles down because you can't use your trekking poles because it's these really big boulders. And if it rains and it's really slippery, so that slows you down. But usually I would say about 8 hours.
Okay. Chicken Hawk says he feels lied to, that now he knows that trail mix isn't actually for the trail. So it's something to sell in gas stations.
I don't think so.
What was your most scary? You may have shared it already, but if you had another one, scariest story while you were hiking, if you have one?
No, I haven't. So I mentioned the snakes, but so if you go on my Instagram, there's a day that I have the videos of the snakes. So we were in Pennsylvania. In Pennsylvania is where I saw the most rattlesnakes.
Oh.
In that section, and Pennsylvania is a lot of rocks. Like they call it Rocksylvania is kind of the joke on trail because it's terrible. In my personal opinion, we could skip Pennsylvania in the trail because it was not a fun state when it came to hiking. The people, best best trail magic on trail. But anyways, so it had been raining, and we're like boulder hopping, crawling around boulders, so it's not flat ground. You can't really see it. And like within 2 minutes of each other, I came up on like 2 dens of rattlesnakes.
Oh,
and so
gross.
I'm walking, and I have my pack, and I'm slipping because the rocks are slick because they're wet. And so I kept sliding into like these crevices of the rocks.
Oh,
and
Jesus
I slid,
Christ.
and I caught myself, and I looked to the right, and like they never rattled at me, but I saw them like in the hole, curled up together, and I was like, said something really ugly, and like nobody was with me, so I was by myself. And so I'm like, okay, like we've seen snakes before, we're good with this, I'm gonna keep going. And like 2 more steps, I slip again, and I see another den of rattlesnakes, and I was like, I freaked out. I'm like, I can't do this, there's snakes everywhere. And like my brain went, worst case scenario, my foot's gonna slip in this den, they're all gonna bite me, I'm gonna die right here on trail. Like that's where my brain went. This is the mental thing that you're fighting, because I was by myself, I was tired, I was cold, I was wet, and I was scared. And like, so I got down away from the rocks, and like I passed a dirt road, and so I sat down, and I just started bawling. I was like, I can't do this. I'm gonna get bit, I'm gonna get pulled off trail, I'm not going to finish this. And then all of my insecurities about trail came on, and I'm like texting my friends. And one of the guys that I hiked with, who had left trail, I'm like texting him. I'm like, I don't know what to do. So I'm like, you need to come get me. Like, I'm not getting back on trail. Like, I'm on this dirt road. Come and pick me up. I can't do this. There are snakes everywhere. And I saw 2 more rattlesnakes that day. Like I was like, I can't, I'm not going to quit on a bad day. I'm not going to quit on a bad day. I have to keep, and I was like, my family's waiting on me. We have a place that we're camping. I have to make it to camp, because if I don't make it to camp, they're going to be worried about me. Like, I have to keep moving. I was like, Blue, get up, start walking. And so I got up and I started walking again. And then I caught up with Puddles, one of the girls that I hiked with. And I was telling her, and I think she could see it on my face. I probably had no blood in my face. And then we ran into a rattlesnake with her with me. And I was like, I can't do this. Like, I can't handle any more snakes today.
Oh my God. That's the one bad day that I would have excused you to give up on. But that's fine. It's good you didn't.
That was the only day that I really, like, I was like texting my friend, like, you have to come get me. I cannot do this.
Ah, fuck. Oh, yeah, I'm not a snake guy. Maybe it's because I grew up where, they don't survive the winter. So
yeah, and so they're protected there. Like, most of the trail, their rattlesnakes are protected. Like, cotton, like you can't kill them. And I was like, we joked. I was like, I want to kill one. I want a nice long rattler, and I want to hang it from my pack, because I overcame that day, and I need that rattler to make me feel better that I did this.
Oh, I'll protect the rattlesnake. That's for sure. My God. So Haas wants to know, do you have any plans to hike the PCT on the West Coast or no?
So maybe. So LG came by during the holidays, and him and I were like reminiscing and talking. And I kind of asked him, like, so are you thinking about it? And he kind of mentioned, yeah, maybe in a couple of years. And so I reached out to my family, and I was like, all right, guys, 2025, let's do it. PCT. You got 2 years to plan it. We can figure it out. I want to get a freeze dryer. So I'm like, I'll freeze dry all my meals, because I'm ketovore now. Like, I'm on a pretty strict diet. So I would have to make all of my meals, so that, because most lightweight hiking food is nothing but carbs and sugar.
Right.
So
I wonder,
we're kind of possibly.
Okay.
2025, maybe.
You freeze dried though. I mean, I guess the cool thing about being ketovore would be, your calories are in the most dense form you can possibly get. So size wise, maybe, I don't know. That'll be neat.
I gotta really plan for. Sorry, go ahead.
You could do a whole video series on hiking as keto, right? Or hiking.
And that's what I kind of thought. And then, like, Xena will be with me too, because she's like a new addition to the family. So it'll be a whole different, like, I would say it's gonna take us a year to prep for me to get like her ready for hiking and figure out gear for her and make sure that she's safe.
So so Xena is she's a service dog, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously service dogs are cool, but are dogs in general okay on the Appalachian Trail or in the?
So there's a guy that we hiked with for a little bit that he's hiked the AT a couple of times with his dog, Haywood. I think he's a pit mix, and he actually did part of the PCT with him this year. It was pretty cool to watch them do some awesome stuff on the PCT together. And so that's what I was like, I'm going to reach out to him and get some advice on how he's done it, because it can be dangerous. Like, you have to be really cautious and careful with the wild animals, and then your hiking pace is different because you hike at your dog's pace, because you could you could hurt them.
Yeah, but I hear this is the content creator in me, of course, but I'm thinking you could do something on hiking with a dog and hiking keto. So yeah, I mean, that's two niches that you could really. Yeah, I mean, look, I was doing a little prep for the show tonight, and of course I typed in Appalachian Trail, and who came up but Dixie Jessica Mill, right? And I realized she only first hiked in 2015. So that's only, I mean, it's 8 years ago now, but that's not that long ago for her
to do some awesome stuff too.
Oh, she's just come back from Kilimanjaro, I believe.
Yeah, so that's what they're hiking it right now. Or I saw on Facebook where they were fixing to do Kilimanjaro.
Isn't that? Oh yeah, that's neat. But
yeah, she's done some awesome stuff. I love watching her stuff too. She's one of my favorite YouTubers to watch for hiking. She's not sponsored. Like, she is brutally honest, tells it how it is, and like how everybody should be. I've never met her. We're both on the expert council for the Survival Podcast, which is cool. So that's kind of our connection, but we've never, I've chatted with her online, but we've never, I'll have to have her on sometime, but everybody says she's awesome. And she does, I think 100 neck knives from Patrick at MT Knives every year too. And I started a few of these comments too. Brian, I think, was he part of your family or just somebody from the Appalachian Trail? He said, my problem is, like, trail names are what most people I know. I don't know people's real names.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, but he obviously was able to answer. But he said you also learn to adjust your pace to get away from people that you don't enjoy. Did you find that?
Yes. Yeah. And that's what, there was a couple of people that I feel like there were a couple of days that I pushed through and I was like, oh, I can't, because I don't want to hike with them, because they would like, well, so there was this one young kid, and he was just young, and he was just young. I don't know any other way to say it. And he would pop up at camp late. So he was trying to keep up with us. And so we're all like, all right, nobody tell him where we're camping. Because we would always sit like at camp and like, okay, this is where we're going to stop. This is where we're, our plan for the next day. And that's what we don't say it. Because he was annoying. And I mean, he was a sweet kid, but it was just annoying for us. So we just stopped sharing our plans to out hike him.
You got to do what you got to do, right?
Yeah.
GK, said my favorite trail angel was the Omelet Man.
So he didn't come out during 2020. So a lot of trail angels didn't come out because of all that was going on. So normally the AT is like known for its trail magic, and we didn't get any trail magic until after the Smokies. We had to create our own trail magic.
And trail magic means people who come out.
It's people that come out and feed on trail. People hide food. So they'll put a cooler out, like right off of a road. They'll put a cooler that's got like beer and snacks, water, soda. But usually in the South, most people come out and feed. So you go to these major crossings and they know when like the big bubbles are coming through. And so they'll cook a bunch of food and feed hikers.
Oh,
so it's great. Sweet. So you get a good meal and you can actually save your food for like later down the trail. Or if it's cold and rainy, you get a warm meal. It's nice. So there wasn't, because all that was going on, people were scared and nobody came out and we kept showing up like, you're told not to expect it, but people do. Like we kind of did. Like it's the AT. People come and feed hikers. There was nobody, and I'm like, what the heck is going on? And then we just kind of figured it was because of what was going on.
Did you ever come across any of is it trail phones or like the woods phones at all? I've seen them on Instagram. So, and I don't know if it's an Appalachian Trail thing or if it's just a random woods thing, but they just put like old wall mount landline phones. There's no connection, but I don't. It's like an Instagram thing where people leave messages. I don't know. I thought it was kind of cool, but I've never.
No, that's funny. Yeah.
If I remember, I'll send you. I have them on Instagram. I'll send the link to you. But,
heck yeah, that's cool.
Brian says he hiked with a guy called Rat Sandwich that liked to hunt at all the camp spots.
Oh no.
I'm thinking hunting's probably not cool on the AT, or is it kind of iffy or no?
So people don't really hunt. Like, so I knew there were some young guys that we ended up running up on. That one of the guys was from Germany, and so because of what was going on, he wanted to. So he stopped hiking. So they were just living in the wilderness, and he had rock falls, and they were catching rats and mice at the shelters, and they were eating them.
I guess you got to do.
I don't know if he was doing it, and I don't know if it was real, like if he was lying to us and like feeding us this thing.
All I can figure is I don't know how many rats you'd have to eat in a run of a day, because there ain't many fucking calories in a rat. So
no, and that's a lot of work, and you're close, like just go in town and get food. Like you're not far from town.
Oh, GK also said this was back when we were talking about listening on the trail. They said they listened to the Sackett series with Louis L'Amour, which started in the Smokies and the Blue Ridge. So that's cool. When I have a long trip, like when I went to North Carolina, 30 hours in the truck, I kind of plan if there's 2 or 3 long books I want to knock out. That's what I do. So I can imagine that would be a neat way to do it.
I'll have to check that one out. Did
you have a paper backup map at all?
I didn't. So I had started to, and I was going to, but it ended up just getting like it got wet a couple of times because I had pulled sections out of my book. I had a paper book.
Okay.
I pulled sections out of it, and I kind of kept some of my sections with me, but it ended up being weight, and it got messed up, and I used my phone, and I took the risk and just didn't, and I never needed it.
Is it hard to get lost on the trail, or is it possible? Like how?
So it depends on if you get lost in a paper bag or not.
Okay. All right. So I would get lost then.
If you're directionally challenged, you can. So there's a lot of places. So my friend that hiked told me, so there's a couple places in the Smokies when you come in, if you come in at night and you're tired and you're not really paying attention, you could end up going back and going back the way you came.
Oh,
because it's just the way it's set up. So that you can do that, but I feel like there's no reason to really get off trail.
Okay.
And if you are getting off trail, then you're running a risk and you need to be paying attention to what you're doing. So if you're somebody that easily gets lost, like don't go off exploring, especially by yourself.
Right. Fair enough. Yeah, I would get lost then. So I wish I wasn't that way, but I get it. But it's fairly, I mean, you're going to tell the well-beaten path where everybody walks, right?
Yes.
For the most part.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
There's a couple of people there's a lady that I'd heard about that had gotten turned. I think she went off to use the bathroom, dropped her pack and got lost. And so there's definitely something else going on in that story. Like there's no telling, like she could have been exhaustion. There's no telling. And she actually died out there. Like they found her not far from the actual trail. She had just gotten lost and starved.
When we were in college, we were heading to find a waterfall. There was about 8 of us. And we thought we knew where the trail was. We stepped off the road. We weren't 50 yards into the woods.
Yeah.
And we realized there was no trail and we were lost. I made everybody stand where they were and we would go to shouting distance and took us about half an hour, 50 yards from the road. So I can see how it can happen. But
yeah,
that's cool.
Like you really have to be paying attention to what's going on around you.
Hunter wants to know about backup power, solar, batteries. What did you do? Because I don't imagine there's outlets in the shelters, are there?
Nope. So at an anchor, so this is a big anchor core. So Dixie, I feel like Dixie is who I got this from because I watched her videos. This is a 20,000, I think.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So so I would charge this in town, and I had an iPhone and I did a lot of pictures. I really didn't do a lot of videos though, but I listened to a lot of music and podcasts and books. But I tried to be smart about when I would charge it. Like I wouldn't charge it during the day. I would only charge it at night. But I don't think I ever ran out of power.
That's cool. Did you?
And then I knew people that were doing a lot of like videoing. So they were doing, I guess like the vlogging. Mm-hmm. And so they had multiple anchors. And so they would charge them in town. I didn't use the solar. There's not enough sunlight on the AT for most of the trail to use solar. Like it's a waste of weight for what you're getting out of it.
Tree cover, is that the main reason? Or
yep.
Okay. Yeah. Haas wanted to know about, I think we were talking about the Google Maps, GPS, mm-hmm. but could you access the maps offline if you were in? Now, I guess you said most places now there's data, but did you ever have to do offline maps at all or no?
So the app that I use for my mapping, that's what I use for where I was going, that you could download because it's in sections of the trail. And so you download it. And so you have access offline for those maps. And there's roads on there and there's all kinds of stuff. Everything that you need, you can get on that map. So if you get off trail, and it'll still track where you are. So you can put it in airplane mode and it'll still do the GPS to track you, and you can track yourself to find places too.
That's cool. So what's the app called? Is it just the Appalachian Trail app, or do you know?
No, it's they just changed. It was Gut Hook then. I don't remember. They just changed it to something.
That's
LG.
okay.
I was gonna say one of my trailing may pipe in because they probably know.
That's what if somebody out there knows, throw it in the comments for us. Haas wants to know: did you do any foraging while on trail?
I did. Blueberries was like the biggest thing that I knew and I was comfortable picking and eating. I didn't have, and I feel like I don't have the knowledge. There it is, far out.
Far out. Thank you, Goober Turkey.
That's LG. Thanks, LG. We didn't really, and I feel like there was only certain sections that we hit where it was coming in bloom when we came through, and they were not big. So they weren't like big juicy blueberries. It was, they were wild blueberries and they were up on rocks. So they weren't getting a lot of nutrients, but I feel like that was the only thing that I felt comfortable.
Sure.
That I wasn't going to poison myself. There was a couple of people that did some shroom foraging. I don't know enough to feel comfortable doing it. Yeah.
I'm sure I could learn, but that, wild mushrooms go hand in hand with rattlesnakes for me. I'm like, I just, maybe I'm not a great prepper, but I don't think I could live off of mushrooms in the wilderness, not for a while anyway. But Brian said, I like this one. He said some restaurants didn't like us coming in because we could be rather fragrant.
Yes, I guess that was the advantage of doing it, during COVID. That most people weren't out at restaurants anyways, so we didn't. And you were like tables between each other. But I feel like we usually didn't go in the restaurants until after we showered.
That makes
I mean,
sense.
there were a couple of times that we just went in town and got resupply, and I feel like, you know, those were probably the times that we were probably very fragrant. Yeah, we definitely got some like sour looks, like, oh.
And you probably get acclimatized to it on trail, right? You don't really, I can't imagine
Kind
you'd
of.
really notice, right?
Some stuff. So like a lot of people joked with me when I was on trail. So I bathed every night. Like I had a bar of soap and a washcloth, and I would like sneak off to the creek because I normally can't. I liked camping by water, so I would sneak off and go way down creek where I knew nobody was, and there wasn't a lot of people on trail because I was very cognizant of. I didn't want to make the water nasty if somebody was down water for me and getting water. Like I was always very cognizant of that. And I can't say that I probably didn't pollute somebody's water, but I would wait usually at dusk and go, and I would bathe off every night because I just couldn't, I was so sticky and I just felt really gross. So I figured out ways to bathe to help myself. But usually if I couldn't, so like in PA, there wasn't a lot of water, so I couldn't. Usually by the third day, I'm like, ooh, I'm kind of getting funky. I can smell myself. Like in my tent, I'm like, oh man, I think I'm going to sleep outside. Like I can't even be in my own tent with myself.
But that's cool though. That I didn't realize that. I guess, and yeah, kind of a a stream bath or whatever would definitely help.
It was refreshing because I would soak my feet usually because it was ice cold. So I would soak my feet and try to get the swelling and like numb my feet out before I would lay down. And I mean, there were some times where like if I felt like it wasn't a good place to do it, I would try to gather water and do it kind of out of the water. But there are some times where I like just full laid out and like I found a little opening where I could fit into it, and I would just lay in the ice cold water because it just felt really good, and it was freezing, but I felt refreshed when I got out.
I never asked you this, but we were talking about laying down at night and getting up in the morning. What's the hardest time of the day? Is it getting started, or do you hit a brick wall during the day ever, or did you ever have like a certain time of the day that was always the hardest for you, or no?
So I wasn't a morning person, and I never got up really early. So I bet if I try to get up and when I got up to try to do sunrises, those were hard. So to get up before the sun came up was really hard for me.
When I used to lobster fish, we would start at 2-3 o'clock in the morning, and it was fucking miserable. Yeah. But I always knew if I could make it to sunrise, I was good for the day.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Was that how it was?
And those days were like great. Like I thought I would be tired. Yeah. I thought I was gonna nap because I'm a napper.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm never gonna make trail because I'm gonna be like stopping at lunch and having naps. I never napped on trail. You keep moving and your endorphins are going, and as long as like even on the day that we did 43 miles, like I would sit down and it felt good to sit down, but I feel like my mind didn't shut down until I knew like I'm at camp, I can shut down, and that's when I would shut down and I would eat and like completely pass out.
It's crazy what a person can do if you've made up your mind to do it. I don't know what the military thing is, but it's something along the lines of if you think you want to give up, you're really only a third the way to actually collapsing. So
right.
I know
your bodies can like that's one thing I learned a lot. I mean, I learned a lot of it in the military, but I feel like trail taught me how much my body really can withstand.
Hunter wants to know, how long does a pair of shoes last?
So I would say about 500 miles is what they say, depending on how they're made. So some of the softer side trail shoes, depending if you have really wide feet and you're not in a wide shoe, you can bust out the sides really easily. The soles, if they don't have so I hiked in Hokas or what I ended up getting into, and they have a really thick cushion sole. Like they look like grandma's shoes.
Okay.
But like the soles will withstand really, really well. Most of mine, I busted out the sides of it, either from rocks ripping from like hiking and trying to get down rocks, and it would rip off the sides of it. But when they say shoes in general are about 500 miles.
So when you knew you were getting close to, wearing out a pair, would you pick up another pair, or would you always have a second pair with you?
I always only had one pair.
Okay.
Usually, so there was one instance where the outside of my shoe was holding up pretty good, but because I had insoles too. So, and your insoles are about 500 miles. And so I tried like alternating. So my insoles would last me through 2 pairs of shoes. So the end of one and beginning of another pair. Mm-hmm. So then if the outside of the structural part of the shoe was still withstanding, I would just replace the insoles if I could tell that I wasn't getting the support that I needed.
Okay. Hunter said, is there a route going coast to coast? All the trails go up and down. Is there any trails that go east to west?
There's a couple of them. So there's none that straight connect.
Okay.
There's a couple that so there's like the Ice Age Trail that goes across Minnesota, I think. I feel like I'm getting that wrong. So there's the Ice Age Trail that goes across. And I think there's one that connects the CDT and the PCT. I don't remember if it's north or south, but there's a way that I've seen people connect them. But they may not be like recognized trails to connect. You have to use, so like for the AT, there's the Florida Trail comes up through Florida, and then it connects to the Pinhoti, which comes through Alabama. And then to connect from the Pinhoti to the AT, you have to take the Benton Mackay.
Okay.
So you're connecting a bunch of different trails to get to the AT, but then you can do that all the way up and into the international AT, and you can go all the way up the coastline.
Is there anybody do you know if anybody completed both?
Yeah. There was a couple of people on trail with me that were like, they had started down at the Keys and they were going all the way up. I was like, oh my gosh, especially the people that I met early on trail when I'm doing 7 miles and they're like, oh, I'm doing like 25 miles today. I was like, you're doing what? Why? But then they told me that they'd started and I was like, oh, you have your trail legs. That's why you can do that.
How long does it take to get your trail legs?
I would say at least a month.
Okay.
Until you really, really get them. Usually within 2 weeks, you start feeling stronger, but I feel like it took me a month to really feel like I had my trail legs.
There's a really good one here from Eric. Said, is there any other accomplishment in your life that you feel equals your Appalachian Trail completion yet?
That's a hard question.
I knew that would get you, but that's okay if there's no answer either way.
I don't think so. Like, I feel like the AT is probably like the biggest thing that I've accomplished in my life.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Was there a letdown when you went off trail? Like, is there kind of, it's like everything, somebody wins the Stanley Cup or the World Series, they work really hard to get to it, but then 3 or 4 days afterwards, it's like, oh, okay.
So I think post-trail life is very hard. And I think the way I figured it out, because there's a lot of people that actually commit suicide after trail. And there's a lot of people that commit suicide. Like they get on trail, they don't finish it, but they come off and they struggle with it. And I did a lot of research into it because the mental health stuff is very interesting to me. So when you're hiking that many days in a row, your endorphin, so your body is creating this endorphin release, and it's just like any other drug, you're addicted to that endorphin release. So when you go from hiking every day to you take a 0 and you kind of have a relax, but then you go in the next day and you're hitting that release and you're hitting that high, and then you come off trail, and if you don't have a plan, like I'm going to keep hiking, I'm going to keep moving, then you hit that wall like addicts do when you're having withdrawal, and your body will literally go through a withdrawal from your endorphin release.
I've never heard anyone say that before. I had no idea.
It's crazy. I think a lot of people don't realize that's what's happening. But that's like when I really sat down and thought about it and like did some research. I mean, it just makes sense.
Sure.
And I went through it. I remember like a lot of people go through post-trail depression and, they get out and they hike and it kind of helps. But it's like when you're doing that much like hardcore strenuous exercise, especially a trail like that for 5 to 6 months, like your body is addicted to that release. And then you stop giving it to that. And so you can go into this deep depression and withdrawal because you're literally like a drug addict going through withdrawals. So I feel like that's where, like, I feel like that was my letdown, was dealing with that. It wasn't necessarily because I felt accomplished. Like I did it, like I finished it. And I mean, I didn't accomplish what I thought I was going to accomplish. Like I went out there thinking I'm going to figure out my life. Like I'm going to have 5 months in the woods. Like I'm going to spend, 5 months walking with Jesus and hanging out with Jesus and like becoming closer. And I'm going to have a plan for life. Like I'm going to come out of this and be like, I'm ready. Let's do this. I know what to do with my life. But I didn't. Like I was in survival mode the whole time. Like there were moments where I felt like, okay, I'm good. And I could sit and I could get in my head and think about it. But there was so much of it that I was like, I got to get to camp. I got to get water. I got to have food. I gotta get shelter, and then once I get to those things, then I could kind of process things. But I didn't, and I think a lot of people do, but I didn't. Like I was in survival mode, so I didn't really process things to have come off trail with a plan. I was just excited that I finished it.
You just want okay. This buddy of mine from out east, he was my old boss, and he's a radio guy for a lot of years. His name's Ed. He filled us in. The Trans-Canada Trail was completed 25 years later. So
Wow.
it started in 1992, and it was completed in 2017, which was Canada's 150th birthday. So
That's awesome.
I wasn't far off. So it started when I was in grade 6, and it finished 6 years ago now. So
Sweet. I have to look up to see if anybody's hiked it.
yeah,
I'm sure somebody has. Let's see how many people have.
Goober wants to know, how do you recommend keeping bears away from your food at night?
So I have this theory that I swear by, and we tested this, and I will take somebody to the science of this. So I used Tiger Balm on my feet every night. So that was my go-to for my muscles every night because my feet hurt, my shins hurt, like I had leg cramps. Tiger Balm was the easiest thing to get onto. It was a hard container, so it didn't get squished and like leak all over my pack. So that's what I went with. And I think my theory is that the menthol that is in the Tiger Balm keeps wild animals away. I never had mice come in my tent. I never had issues with bears. I never had issues with any wildlife. And then when we were up in the 100-mile wilderness, Puddles had mice crawling on her tent, like over her mesh, crawling over her tent. And she's like, Blue, there are mice on my tent. So I threw her my Tiger Balm, and I was like, put Tiger Balm on your tent. She did, and they left. I was like, it's the menthol. Because I think it burns your nose when you smell it and burns your eyes.
Sure. Now,
why would it not do anything else?
My cats, we have a couple cats. They go crazy for anything like that, but they're the only ones. I don't know. Cats are their own weird breed, but yeah,
they are weird.
I get it. Porterhouse. So your full trail name was Blue Sasquatch, is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
So Porterhouse says Blue Sasquatch has the coolest dog. I think so. Yeah.
She is.
And her name's Xena.
Yeah.
Is in like Xena Warrior Princess.
It is. Xena, come here. She's over there sleeping.
That's right. She made a cameo before we started, so I get to say hello. But see if she'll come up. I'll bring the picture out further if she'll. There we are.
There she is. Say hi.
Hi, Xena.
Say hi. Look at the camera. Oh, that's a good girl.
That's it. What do we got here? Injuries. Did you have any injuries? And did you carry an IFA or an individual first aid kit?
Oh, so I had some basic first aid stuff, so nothing really serious, which I feel like now I probably would take more of I'd probably have a tourniquet with me now. Even though I never needed one, I think I would be more comfortable having some of the training that I've had since then. Like I've done some wilderness first aid training, and I would just feel better having that, being prepared for that. So I had a basic, like Band-Aids, some moleskin, and tape.
Okay.
I really didn't have anything more than that. No, only injuries I had were some sprains and strains and cramps.
Did you?
Oh, well, I guess, I don't know if this, so I got trench foot when I was on trail.
And that's when it doesn't, your feet never dry out. Is that the idea?
Yep. So when it rained on us almost, I feel like every day we were in the Smokies, it rained. And so I had trail runners, which are not waterproof. And this is why I would never recommend getting waterproof shoes if you're hiking, because they never dry out.
Okay.
Because your feet, if you're hiking in the rain, like your shoes are going to get wet.
Right.
There's no way to keep them from not getting wet. And so I would change out of my wet socks and put my sleep socks on. And so because my sleep socks they were dry, but my feet were still wet. So then my feet never dried because it was cold. So I was putting socks on because my feet were cold.
Sure.
So by the time I got off when we were leaving the Smokies, like my feet started really hurting, and I could see something was going on with my feet. And so we did some research, and I talked to one of the guys at the shelter, and I was like, something's going on with my feet. I think I'm getting early signs of trench foot. And so he was like, well, tell me about, like, how does your hike go? Like, what do you do through the day? And so then I told him that I was sleeping with my socks on. He's like, stop sleeping with socks on. Your feet are not drying out.
Oh,
I was like, so then I did. And it took about a week and a half for it to really, really heal, where it wasn't painful to walk on.
So what is it? Like, I mean, what does it look like, or what does it feel like?
So I got like a lot of really, really small bubbles. like blisters all over the bottom of my feet.
Okay.
And then it was like tingly, like it felt like little needles dabbing all over my feet all the time. Like when I would put weight on it, it was like when your foot goes to sleep and then it wakes up and you get those tingly. So it was like that when I put weight on it.
And
then it was like the skin was dying off, like all of it, because it was all wet. So like the under part of the skin of my feet was just dying off.
And you just kept hiking? I mean, you don't have much of a choice, right?
I didn't feel like I did. Like that's what I mean. I guess it's good that I had that kind of outlook where I was like, I just got to push through.
Haas wants to know: did you journal at all while you were hiking?
I tried some. I was never really good at it. I think because by the time I sat down in camp, I was so tired. Like I would eat my food and then I would try to do some journaling. I was trying to do it on my phone because I didn't want to have pen and paper. I didn't want to do it. I was trying to keep it dry. And so I have a journal app that I was using for some stuff, but I like went back the other day and started looking. I really didn't.
Whatever. Yeah.
If I was to do it again, I would be more purposeful about maybe during the day, not trying to wait till like when I'm getting ready to go to bed. Cause I was so exhausted by the time I laid down that it wasn't like sleep was more of a priority than trying to journal.
If you did it again, would you vlog at all or would you do video?
I think I would probably actually vlog more than I would write stuff just because it would be easier.
That's how I feel.
Yeah. It'd be so much easier just to do that. Goober Turkey, LG, he had a journal every night. Like I would see him in his tent, like journaling. And I'm like, you're crazy. I can't believe you're doing that. And I would love to read his journal because I think he did it every night, like had a big journal that he kept with a pen and paper and wrote in it. He was really good about it.
Everybody, to each their own, right?
Yeah.
But that's cool. That is the end of the questions we had. So I had one more for you. So you walked 5 months and it was crazy. You saw things in yourself that you didn't necessarily know you had, right? But
yeah.
How do you feel it changed you? What in the doing that 5 month, craziness, was there anything that it changed you coming off trail?
So much. So there's a lot of people that hike that joke about like it's the worst thing that's ever happened to you because it changes your perspective. Like, I mean, it was a complete paradigm shift on how I see things in the world. Before, like, I feel like it was my Matrix moment, I guess you can say, of like realizing like how brainwashed I was by the world, like how backwards things were. Because you go out in nature and you see nature as it's intended and how simple things are supposed to be. And then you come back in the world and everybody wants to make things complicated. And it's like, it's not complicated. Like life is not complicated. It's hard and making decisions is hard, but we make it complicated because we don't, for whatever reason we do. So yeah, it was like the best thing that ever happened to me. But then like I laugh, I'm like, it's the worst because like my eyes are wide open and I can't close them. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. No, that's cool. Thank you. I didn't know if you'd have an answer or not because I wasn't sure. Yeah.
What is, I wrote something down. Let's see. Oh, and like, I feel like, so you gain a lot of patience on trail.
Okay.
Because like you plan for things and they don't work out. So you have to be able to pivot. You have to be able to be flexible because things like nature happens. Like I remember like we had this plan and this tropical storm hit while we were on trail. And so we had to go into town because it wasn't safe to stay on trail. Because it was bad. Like it was the tropical storm that hit the East Coast in 2020. That's what we were on trail for that. So we made the call to come into town and take a zero and just ride out the storm in a hotel room. And that was not the plan. That put us back a day. And then we get back on a trail and there's trees everywhere. Like we're climbing through trees because there was so much damage on trail and nobody had come through to clean it because it just happened the day before. And so like things like that where like you just have to be flexible. So you like I feel like I learned a lot of patience, but then I don't have a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? But not for like bull crap. Like I have patience for real life stuff, but I don't have patience for like the BS that people want to do.
Sure.
And I think a lot of people on trail kind of get that where you're like, you think this is important? Like, this isn't important? This doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. Come on, people.
So you found patience for life and the things that matter, but you also kind of pared away all the bullshit that doesn't matter, and you have less patience for it now, hey?
Oh yeah, definitely.
So how do people find you, Val, if they want to follow up with you?
So I have an Instagram page called She Walks 2020. I started a TikTok and I started a YouTube, but I haven't really quite got, like, I've done a couple of videos because my plan is to really, it's not really on hiking. So my Instagram was about hiking because that's what I was trying to do a fundraiser when I did my hike. It just didn't work out. A lot of crap happened and just didn't work out. So I created the TikTok and the YouTube because I really want to work on my calling in life is for women coming out of human trafficking. Okay. And so like the goal in those, when I kind of figure out my timing and figure out all that stuff, is to kind of just be some encouraging videos and some positive stuff, because there's so much negativity and so much crap out there that more people need to put out positive stuff. And so that's my goal is to talk about like the positive stuff and maybe do some videos of the crazy stuff going on here at the little farm that we have and with Xena and all that fun stuff. But yeah, so Instagram's probably the best place, and eventually TikTok and YouTube maybe.
Well, I put the Instagram link in today's description. It's out everywhere. So make sure you follow everybody. Make sure you follow Val, and
that's a great place to go see some AT pictures, because that's where I posted all my stuff. So you can go through and see my my highlight pictures.
Cool. Well, thanks, Val. This was, you never know. It was a trip. Let's put it that way. So, but you never know. I mean, I appreciate it. Thank you. This was
thank you.
Like super insightful, and you could tell people we had about 20 people in here at one time, and the audience stayed, and a ton of questions.
I was entertaining. Yay!
Yes, absolutely. Maybe we'll have to, if you're up for it, maybe in a few months, bring you back on, because I think there's enough questions that we could probably do another Q&A with you if you're up for it.
Oh, I can talk about trail all day.
All right. Well, we will. That'd be cool. I'd love that. Yeah.
Yes.
Are you okay to hang around for a second in the background?
Definitely.
Okay. I'll close up and I'll be right back with you.
Okay.
Guys, I hope you enjoyed that. That was, I know I've seen a couple more questions come in late there, guys. I apologize. I can send them off to Val email, but you know what? Let's just have her back on, because she was a joy to talk to, and she's an absolute fountain of information. So I hope you enjoyed that. So start saving up your questions for her. We'll have her back. We'll do another one on long distance hiking, because I don't know. It takes its own mindset. So thank you. Thanks to Val. Make sure you go and follow her on Instagram. That's how we support all the fellow creators and the incredible people that we have on. So with that, guys, I want to thank you for hanging around. Tomorrow night, I have Ryan from the Next Gen podcast coming on talking about alternative fuel sources. That's going to be a fun one too. I think Ryan has the record for being on the show the most times, other than my wife. But she lives with me, so I guess that doesn't count, right? So he's the biggest outside guest who's been on. So, guys, thanks a lot for all the questions. Thanks to Val for dropping on, and as always, stay happy, stay healthy, and have a great